Well, let me just go. And one of the right out of the box, you talk about the psychology of a liberal, and you talk about the Democratic Party is the party of a mob. Irrespective of what the mob represents, they activate mobs, they depend on mobs, they coddle mobs. You know, you're on Good Morning America tomorrow. The first question is going to be, are you saying all liberals and all Democrats are mobsters, Ann Coulter? There's a point that you're making. That's why I wanted you to go uninterrupted here, because throughout the book, you're laying out a case that ends in a conclusion. And it's not something we could even get in 2 segments, but I really want you to follow through from that starting point and all the examples, and you lead us through the French Revolution to conclude, to come up with this title, demonic, which they'll freak out about.
Right.
Why? How do we get there?
I began the book with the scene in the Bible when Jesus approaches the possessed man, and the possessed man's screaming, he's out of his mind, he's naked, he's running around. Legion. Don't torture me, don't torture me. And Jesus, there's a little exchange. Jesus says, what is your name? And he answers, my name is Legion. Then the demons run out of him. The demon's name is Legion. The demon is always a mob. And you see this over and over again in real life exorcisms. They talk to the possessed, and it's always they. Satan saying, they all belong to me. And this is, I mean, it's part of why liberals are a mob and are so obsessed with status and power. Conservatives, as I said, have a real savior. It's more up and down. We don't care as much. In fact, Christians kind of like to be hated.
Does that, you saying that all liberals are demonic? You're not saying that. There's a point, though, that you're making about...
Mobs are always demonic. They are antithetical to this country's history. We have always understood that mobs were dangerous. I mean, the Shays Rebellion is what created the Constitution. It was a mob uprising, and the Articles of Confederation weren't enough to keep the people safe. As I say, the Boston Tea Party, they were very concerned that it looked like the action of a mob, and 2 of the participants, Paul Revere and Sam Adams, specifically defended the Boston Tea Party, saying there was no property destruction other than the tea. Ben Franklin insisted that they take up a collection to repay the India Tea Company. Paul Revere made sure there was the lock that had to be cut for the Boston Tea Party was replaced, and one guy who took tea for his personal use was severely punished. It was not the act of a mob, but even that much upset them. Then you had...
We're going to come back, and as with all of your books, we try to predict where the attacks are going to come from.
You can't do it.
Well,
let's take an office pool here at Fox and see if anyone can. But you're all going to have to read the book very quickly.
I'm going to tell you where I think it is, and we'll tell you in the break. We're going to take a break. We're going to come back much more with Ann Coulter straight ahead, and we'll have a sneak peek at our sit-down interview with one of the women who received Congressman Weiner's photos. You're going to hear her side of the story and why she's coming forward next and tomorrow night.
Let me just get to this little controversy. You've been all over the blogs in the last day or so. We canceled your appearance here on Tuesday. And from what I've been reading, you thought you were banned for life from the show. Were you behind that report?
No, I didn't say that. That was from a reliable news report. The point is I was canceled twice, and it wasn't until the Drudge Report ran a headline on its own reporting, and the Drudge Report has never had to retract a report.
You know, the book is called Guilty, Ann Coulter. I'm glad you're back.
Oh, so am I. Thank you.
It's good
nice
to be
to see you again.
All right. We are going to, by the way, you're not banned for life, obviously. Okay. Your next book comes out.
Thank you.
I'm sure
delighted to hear that.
You'll be sitting right here again.
Wow. That was the last. Have you been invited back?
No, apparently the Drudge Report is a better reporter than Matt Lauer, even about what Matt Lauer is going to do in the future.
Apparently.
So Drudge, right again, always believe Drudge.
But Good Morning America.
Banned for life.
And you're on The View later this week.
Yes, I am.
And then when you get under fire, we'll have you back about the first controversy.
We're thinking Thursday night.
Thursday night, which is, all right, look, I don't want to interrupt this. You and I had an hour debate on discussion on radio today, and I thought it was really fascinating. And I don't want to get into that because once we go down that road...
There's so much more in this book.
No, there really is. But I want you, the one thing we did not get to that I think is really important, I want to tie this tied into what is a very powerful conclusion. Because I think you're leading up to something, and I want you to explain to people what it is.
I think Americans at this point, well, I was starting to say just before the break, Americans have always understood the danger of mobs. They are always dangerous. They are always demonic. Thus, the Shays Rebellion, the creating our Constitution, the Boston Tea Party not being so warm feeling so warmly about that. You had
I
during
like the Boston Tea Party, though. Taxation.
Well, it was very peaceful. The only thing more peaceful than the original Boston Tea Party are today's tea parties, where they leave the mall cleaner than when they got there. Okay, then during the Civil War, you had, again, Democrats in New York engaging in massive, horrible mobbings against blacks in New York, lynchings, draggings by genitals. And Abraham Lincoln sees another Democrat mob, they're always the Democrats, sends the military little detour up to New York, crushes the mob, goes back, wins the war, and then Abraham Lincoln carries New York in the next election. So we've had mob uprisings before, but we've always known you can't reason with a mob. I think conservatives, I think a lot of peaceable Americans have forgotten that. We did have something as close as this country got to the French Revolution in the 60s with the Weathermen and SDS and the bombings.
And you have some interesting stuff in here about our buddy Bill Ayers, which was pretty. I'm not going to give it up because I want people to buy. All right.
A small item. But the point is, Nixon came in, shut it down. There was the shooting at Kent State. And gosh, I know liberals don't like it. And you look on Nexus and, oh, the whole country was embarrassed. Well, I'm not embarrassed. That's what you do with a mob. They were monstrous at Kent State. It was being led by Bill Ayers,
when
best
you
friend
have,
and
when
male
you
lover.
are dealing with mob rule, when you are dealing with, you know,
overreact.
Whatever. Well, okay. When you're dealing with a lie, too. Remember the road less traveled author Scott Peck also wrote a second book, The People of the Lie.
I think you're getting,
No. But when he's talked about when there's a lie, there's also evil. He was talking about that.
Right. I can use him in my book.
But there is a sinister, predictable technique and tactic to attack and slander and besmirch people. For example, the latest one is on Medicare. What are you dealing with, and how do you effectively deal with it in the minute we have left?
That's all part of the crowd psychology. They don't. It's from Rousseau, the paranoid hypochondriac, that inspired the French Revolution. Don't speak to people in words. Use images. Speak to the heart, not to the head. Well, that's what they're doing with Medicare. They won't talk about the fact that it's about to go bankrupt. They'll just show a picture of Congressman Ryan pushing a woman in her wheelchair
off the cliff.
No, they use images. That's how you gin up a mob. You don't do it through careful arguments about how we need to cut taxes because that will increase revenue to the government.
All right, we're going to see you later this week. It's in bookstores everywhere, Amazon.com.
As of midnight tonight.
Honestly, a really thought-provocative, well-researched book. Ann Coulter, thanks for being with us. I can't wait till you get in trouble. And coming up, we've got a clip of my one-on-one interview with one of the women who received those lewd photos from Congressman Anthony Weiner. That's coming up next, and that interview in full tomorrow night. Straight ahead. When that photo of his private areas came in, you know, you're a 26-year-old girl, he's a 46-year-old congressman that's recently married. What did you think then?
I just thought at the time, there's got to be something. There's way more girls out there. This is not just me. There's nothing like, oh, this is so special about me that, you know, there's just a lot more girls.
Yeah.
That's what I thought at the time. Like, this is something that's regular. He's done all the time. He's comfortable.
All right, that was part of my interview with Megan Broussard, one of the women who received these lewd photos from Congressman Weiner. You can see the full interview with her tomorrow night right here, 9 p.m. Eastern. Joining me with reaction to the Congressman's shocking confession earlier today are the editor-CEO of WorldNetDaily.com, author of the Tea Party Manifesto, Joe Farah, and Fox News legal analyst and host of FoxNewsLive.com is Kimberly Guilfoyle. You know, one of the issues that came out, there are 5 pictures here, and the one I was asking her about is this is a full, naked, excited picture of a congressman.
Well, it's totally inappropriate. He knew that he sent it to begin with, and he sat there and
26-year-old girl.
One lie after the next and acting like he hasn't done anything that's inappropriate or unethical. And the fact of the matter is he did, and not just once. It appears multiple times he's done this. People are now coming forward with it, and even his own party is starting to realize that there's a problem here and calling for an investigation.
You know what every married American male is thinking today, Sean? I'm glad I'm not Anthony Weiner.
Oh, that's a good point. But, you know, but there's a serious side to this, and this came up in the press conference about, you know, she's 26 years old. She served her country in the Navy. She's going on to become a nurse. She's really, you know, developing a nice life for herself. She's a full-time mother. She didn't send him any, you know, as she pointed out in the interview, I'll let it run tomorrow, but she didn't send any similar pictures. He didn't even know her. What does that say about his judgment and his ability you know.
Well, it shows he has no judgment. But we've seen this so many times.
But should they resign? Is there a double standard?
Of course he should resign. I mean, we need to have some standards in office. And, of course, the House of Representatives, you know, Weiner asked an interesting question in his press conference when he ran out of apologies, and that was, you know, did I violate the Constitution by lying about this? And the answer is in Article 1, Section 5. The House of Representatives sets its own rules about conduct. And we're going to see, once again, here how Nancy Pelosi handles this and how House Speaker...
What do you think?
They're going to be under a lot of pressure here to not be hypocritical in terms of how they handle this. I mean, this guy needs to step down and do the right thing. I think it's completely inappropriate what he did. It shows no judgment whatsoever. And obviously, he has a bit of a problem that he is sending these pictures unsolicited, inappropriate to young co-eds. It's really sad.
If he might have known her, like,
going to cut it.
Look, and I'm pleased, I don't want everyone out there taking this the wrong way. If he had known her, if he was an old friend, maybe they dated in college, he's just like, you know, this is somebody he just met. April 20th or 27th is the first email exchange.
But, Sean, Bill Clinton, Barney Frank, Jerry Studs, we can go down the list of scandals like this. And
Elliot Spitzer.
I mean, Barney Frank's
he plays
still
his
in
cards
office.
right. He might be a host on CNN any day now.
You know, just because other people have done it doesn't make it okay. And in fact, there should be a standard set here and have some kind of ethics with respect to people that hold public office.
The standard is that there's no punishment for Democrats, and Republicans either
resign.
Chris Lee resigned about taking his shirt off and posing for pictures. I think this is a far worse situation. He should do the right thing. It's insulting. His behavior is just grossly arrogant.
But I want to see, what are the Democrats going to do? Are the Democrats going to, Chuck Schumer, this just broke, is now, they'll censure.
That's what I predict.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And they may redistrict him out of a seat at some point, but, you know, they're not going to force him out. Look, I mean, look at who's still in the House. Charles Rangel's still in the House. Barney Frank's still in the House.
Well, he just redistricted
Bill Clinton's getting
out
awards.
of running for mayor of New York, so at least that's taken care of.
Jerry Studs got a standing ovation from House Democrats. This is a guy who had sex with a congressional page, correct?
Well, what about, you know, you think back to when Republican scandals come up, they all bail out. I can't think of one that ever stayed, can you?
And rightfully so. We just had one in New York, Chris Lee.
New York 26, Chris Lee.
No shirt on.
Right, that's
it.
But then there's one of those photos, too.
Look, there's more that's going to come out about this. There's going to be an investigation. Did he use any, you know, congressional phone lines? There's some evidence already to suggest that, in fact, that he did. So there's appropriate action should be taken. When you see Nancy Pelosi starting to speak out about this, you know he's in trouble.
I mentioned earlier that there was a moment there, you know, he's breaking up. He seemed sincere, you know. He's got to be humiliated and embarrassed. I feel sorry for his family, but every time I think of that,
well, then don't be a sexual predator.
Well, that's
really?
the point.
I'm sorry.
No.
I don't feel sorry for him.
But here's the point. But then I think of his family, and then I think of the victims, and they're not victims because they're, you know, one woman's 40, but some are in their 20s. They're not victims.
But it doesn't matter regardless of the age, Sean.
Well,
of the
it
women.
does. He's a 46.
No, if it's not consensual, it wasn't something that they solicited.
Well, yeah, I mean,
how dare he sit there and send these photos?
True.
And really, that's a good use of our taxpayer dollars. I'm really glad that
it's a good point.
He's sitting there with his sexual proclivity.
He apparently, look, I interviewed her. We'll have the interview tomorrow night, but she didn't solicit this in any way, shape, manner, or form.
That's my point.
And if she doesn't speak out, now she has to defend herself from his, quote, private investigators. We'll give you the last word, Joe.
Well, you know, Anthony Weiner has always struck me as a guy who liked publicity about as much as...
Oh, he's got publicity.
Now he's got it.
It's like his dream come true, only it's a nightmare.
Yeah.
Right.
All right, does he survive the week? I'll ask both. Does he survive?
Barely, maybe 10 days. He's out.
He'll be in the House. He'll
survive.
Censured at some point.
They'll circle the wagon.
Yep.
All right. We'll have more with that interview tomorrow night, the full interview. Greta's next, and thanks for being with us. We'll see you tomorrow.